The police are convinced that this was a deliberate and a clever attempt to lure members of the security forces into a booby trap. Shortly after 7 o'clock last night, some of the few residents left in the slum clearance area saw lights flashing in the house. I'm told that as many as 4 men were seen moving about inside. Suddenly, the men made a run for it, ran over the debris and the rubble outside the house, jumped into a dark car and drove off at speed. One of the residents then phoned the police to tell them what had happened.
is the fourth prison officer to be murdered since the Troubles began. The other three killings all took place in the last 15 months, and all at the homes of the prison officers, clearly a tactic favoured by the terrorists. But recently, there's been an increasing number of attacks on officers going to and leaving their work, as in this case. And the campaign, which has been carried on by terrorists from both sides, appears to have been stepped up in the last year and a half. It's difficult to establish a definitive motive for this, but one key factor, obviously, was the ending of the special category status for prisoners. Indeed, there was discontent among prison officers who felt they were being used as a political football. But the response generally, as in this case, has been fairly muted. They've suspended visiting and are refusing to accept any parcels for the prisoners until Mr. Milliken's funeral takes place. The Prison Officers Association say this isn't a protest, merely a mark of respect for a man murdered in the course of his duty. They're clearly aware of the need for personal security and they don't want to draw too much attention to themselves. All they ask, they say, is that the public respect the feelings of men carrying out public service in an unbiased and impartial manner.
But still, however, there remains the mystery of just what did happen in that cell last night. The authorities haven't said what the explosive was, or indeed how it was set off. And they haven't said either whether the cell was occupied by Republican or by Loyalist prisoners. The UDA, for their part, say that their men were not involved, whilst the Provisional IRA haven't commented. It seems that the explosive could, however, have been gelignite, though only a very small amount. But that still leaves open the question whether it was explosive that was smuggled in recently or whether it was gelignite that previous searches had failed to unearth. And that is something which the prison governor, for one, will be very anxious to know.
The two soldiers were on duty with several policemen outside Crumlin Road Prison early this morning. At least one gunman and possibly two opened fire on them with a machine gun from across the road. Both soldiers, one of them a military policeman, were hit in the legs. They were taken to hospital, but their injuries aren't thought to be serious.
The judge's decision means a moral but nonetheless very brief victory for the two prisoners. Their application under a writ of habeas corpus has succeeded, and the judges ruled that they were to be released immediately. But a lawyer for the Crown made it plain that they would be arrested immediately once they left Crumlin Road Jail. The governor of the prison, in fact, did not appear before the court. The Crown lawyer ruled that there was, in fact, no defence, that the two men had been held improperly. Well, this is going to pose quite a problem for the authorities, for another 40 men are involved in the same sort of action. And it now seems clear that they too will have to be released and then immediately rearrested by the police.
In his statement, McAvoy, who had married only 3 days before the attack, said he was shattered and horrified when he learned what had happened. He immediately left for a honeymoon in the Irish Republic and there at a monastery made a full confession to the monks. They did not, however, break their vow of silence and tell the authorities. And it wasn't until 2 years ago that McAvoy, who denied being a member of the Provisional IRA, was arrested and charged with the murders. But what exactly did the monks tell him?
I wasn't guilty of anything because I didn't know anything, and that was it. So I just took it at that.
Were you surprised by today's decision?
Very surprised. I was expecting for the worst, and that was it.
What have the last 2 years been like for you in custody?
Bloody hell. That's all I have to say.
And what are your plans now, Dominic?
To go home and see my mother, give her the good news, and that's it.
How would you sum up this whole incident?
I can't.
Can we go back to the incident itself when these two men came to the door? You still maintain you didn't know them?
Forget about that. I just want to get it out of my head, and that's it. It's all finished with. That's all I can say.
When the verdict was announced, McAvoy sat stunned and disbelieving in the dock. So the file on one of Northern Ireland's worst terrorist outrages stays open. The Provisional IRA claimed they did it, and the hunt for those responsible will go on.
Have my MWA and my Well, if you...
Sitting beside him in his car, he drove along Clifton Park Avenue behind me, stopping here at the junction with Crumlin Road. Then the gunmen, who police say had obviously been following behind for some time, drew alongside and opened fire.
Today's victim is the 9th prison officer to die this year and the 5th to be killed within the immediate vicinity of Crumlin Road Jail. In fact, one of the previous shootings happened only a few yards away from this club. The present spate of killings has led to demands from the prison officers for greater security.
An aerial view shows the unusual shape of Crumlin Road Prison. The buildings which stretch out from the centre are called wings. It was in one of these, C Wing, that today's incident took place. The Northern Ireland office will give few details of what happened. In fact, when they were asked for details, it took them 2 hours to confirm that the incident had happened at all. They say a small package containing a cigarette packet, cigarette lighter and 4 small batteries was found in the prison this morning. The package was found in C Wing exercise yard after prisoners had finished their exercise parade. The Northern Ireland office say that during investigations 1 prison officer was slightly injured. They won't say how. Explosives and guns have been smuggled into Crumlin Road Prison in the past, and the security at C Wing, the location of today's explosion, has also been breached before. In 1977 there was an explosion in a cell occupied by 3 remand prisoners. 2 of them were treated for minor injuries. Also in 1977 a search of C Wing recovered 40 sticks of gelignite. By comparison, today's find was very small. Nonetheless, the authorities will want to know how an explosive type device was smuggled into a top security prison.